Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever felt like you were doing something as completely natural as grieving? Well, entirely wrong? Today, we're taking a really deep, empathetic look at something that touches literally every single family at some point, yet it remains profoundly misunderstood. We're talking about the reality of processing loss. We're going to break down how families actually experience grief, far beyond the usual cliches. Okay, let's dive right into this. So, the contrast between expectation and reality is really where so much of our internal conflict begins. Society kind of sets up this neat little expectation that grief is just a straight line, right? That the first few weeks are the hardest and then things just slowly, predictably get easier. But the reality? Oh man, it is completely unpredictable. You might feel totally steady one day and then bam, you're completely overwhelmed by a song on the radio, a specific smell, or just noticing an empty chair at the dinner table. It doesn't just slowly fade away, it hits in these sudden, unpredictable waves. And because of that massive gap between what we expect and what actually happens, when those sudden waves hit, or when different family members react in entirely different ways, well, it leads to one of the heaviest, most silent questions a person can ask themselves. Is my family grieving incorrectly? Let this truth sink in right now. No, absolutely not. There is literally no incorrect way to grieve. Grief is just a completely natural response to loss. You need to lift that burden of shame right off your shoulders, right here and now. People cope in vastly different ways, and just because your personal process doesn't match some textbook expectation, that doesn't mean it's wrong or that you're broken in any way. A huge part of this misconception actually comes from the idea of stages. We've all heard of them, right? The 5 stages of grief. But for most people, grief is absolutely not some neat little checklist that you just cross off one by one. So the crucial point is that grief is messy. It's overlapping. Neurologically speaking, your brain is processing massive shifts. You might feel deep sadness, sudden anger, maybe a strange sense of relief, immense guilt, and profound love. And not just in the same week, but sometimes literally in the exact same afternoon. And that chaotic, turbulent mix, that's entirely normal. To really understand why it feels so chaotic, we've got to look at the biology behind it. Grief isn't just an emotional experience, you see. It's a whole person, physical experience. After a significant loss, your brain, your body, your entire nervous system can kind of get stuck on high alert, constantly looking out for danger or change. In fact, processing grief physically drains your energy reserves in a way that's incredibly similar to finishing a grueling physical workout. Think about it. The person who died was likely a core part of your everyday routines, your emotional safety, your identity. When they're gone, your mind has to physically and biologically adjust to a world that suddenly feels completely unfamiliar. This idea brilliantly illustrates exactly why grief comes in these overwhelming waves. You might understand the loss intellectually, like your logical brain knows exactly what happened, but your physical body, your daily habits, those deeply ingrained relationship patterns, they still expect that person to just walk through the front door at 5 p.m. It takes an immense amount of biological energy to reconcile that reality day after day, which is exactly why simple daily routines can suddenly feel, well, impossibly exhausting. Now, what's really interesting here is the stark generational divide and how grief actually manifests. Within the exact same household, adults might experience profound tiredness, guilt, or just total numbness. They might feel entirely disconnected from the world around them. But meanwhile, children and teenagers, they might show their grief through separation anxiety, sudden angry outbursts, or maybe their grades suddenly drop at school. They might even appear totally fine one minute and then become deeply distressed the very next. Understanding this contrast is absolutely vital if we want to reduce frustration and confusion within the family. And speaking of children appearing fine, there is a massive misunderstanding we need to clear up right away. So many adults think, oh, they're playing, so they must not be grieving. But psychologists actually compare children's grief to jumping in and out of puddles. It's fascinating. They step into the grief puddle, maybe ask a heartbreakingly deep question, and then they immediately step right back out to go play with their toys. This is just how kids process difficult experiences. They do it in small, manageable pieces, rather than trying to carry the whole heavy weight all at once. It helps tremendously to think of grief as having different languages. A teenager withdrawing into total silence, a parent coping by endlessly doing practical household chores, a child asking direct questions, or someone using really dark humor. These are not conflicting reactions. Actually, scratch that. They might look conflicting, but they're really just different expressions of the exact same pain. When we start recognizing these as different grief languages, we can finally stop judging each other and start actually understanding each other a bit better.
Of course, we also have to acknowledge that some contexts make this whole process undeniably harder. Grief doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? If the death was sudden or traumatic, if the relationship was complicated or, unfinished, or if you're juggling financial, legal, or work pressures at the exact same time, well, the burden becomes incredibly heavy. Let's be real, most families are carrying this dense, heavy mix of emotional shock right alongside relentless, immediate practical responsibilities. It's a lot. So let's look at how we can turn this understanding into actual, actionable support. When those really heavy days hit, one of the most powerful things a family can do is simply gently name the reality out loud. Just saying things like, hey, this is a grief wave, or this is a hard day because this date matters, or even just acknowledging we are all missing them in different ways. Doing this literally removes the shame from the room. It tells everyone that having a difficult day doesn't mean you've gone backwards in your healing. It just means a reminder has brought the loss a little closer today. Another absolutely vital step is actively making space for the person who died. Instead of, avoiding the topic to protect each other's feelings, say their name, tell stories about them, maybe create a memory box or light a candle on important dates. Give children honest, age-appropriate information and invite them to draw or write about their feelings. Keeping their memory gracefully present is such a crucial part of the healing landscape, mainly because it integrates the loss into your family's ongoing story. Now, if you're the one trying to support someone else who is grieving, your approach really needs to shift. The absolute most helpful thing you can do is just listen, without trying to fix the pain. You can't fix it. Use the person's name if the family finds it comforting. Offer specific practical help, like drop off dinner or mow their lawn rather than giving those vague offers like let me know if you need anything. And most importantly, do not rush them to feel better. True grief requires time, safety, and unwavering connection. Because the truth is, living with grief over time absolutely does not mean forgetting. It doesn't mean moving on as if that person didn't matter. Over time, the pain might become a little less constant, but the love, that remains exactly as strong. Important dates might still hurt, for sure. Grief simply changes shape as family life evolves and as kids reach new developmental stages. It allows you to carry the memory forward rather than leaving it behind.
However, there are times when the load just becomes way too heavy to carry alone. It's so important to recognize the signs that your family might need some extra support. If the grief is feeling more intense as time goes on, rather than just changing shape, if there's ongoing severe sleep disruption, major drop-offs at school or work, increasing family conflict, or if you just feel entirely stuck and overwhelmed, well, it might be time to reach out. And look, getting professional support is not a sign of failure. Good bereavement support does not pathologize grief. It doesn't treat it like some disease that needs a cure. What counseling actually does is provide a steady, safe space to help you untangle these complex biological and emotional reactions. It reduces that terrible sense of isolation, it improves communication within your home, and it helps you find ways to keep living while still deeply honoring the person who passed away. As the clinicians at Discovery Family Therapy point out, their approach is specifically designed to be gentle, practical, and family-focused. They understand that you're trying to hold on to this immense grief while simultaneously managing parenting, school, work, and just everyday life. Their message is a really profound one to remember. You do not have to carry grief by yourself. There is space out there to hold the loss and rebuild your connection together. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with an essential thought to reflect on. Take a look at your own family. Honor the different grief languages happening under your roof, and ask yourself, how will you make space for your grief today? Thank you so much for learning with us. Take care of yourselves and each other.